Begin today the Gemara on Daf Chav Zayin Amud Beis, 2 lines from the bottom of the Amud. The Gemara says, Ashkechan Seita. So the Gemara here is talking about the halacha that it said in the Mishnah regarding a shvua. So Menatayra, any shvua that a person has to make in a dintayra regarding money matters is not made regarding karka. But if you're making a shvua for metaltalin, for movable items, so then once you make a shvua on metaltalin, you can drag along with it and also obligate the person to swear regarding any money matter related to karka. That halacha is known as Gilgul Shvua. So the Gemara brought the source of Gilgul Shvua, which you find by a saita, when she's swearing about not having a relation with someone in one situation, and because of that we drag along also other cases. But now the Gemara wants to know how we could learn from there to our case regarding money matters. So the Gemara begins on the bottom of Chav Zayin Amud Beis, Ashkechan Seita de Isura. So we find in the Torah this concept of Gilgul Shvua regarding Seita, which is an Isur. However, how do we know that this concept of Gilgul Shvua applies to money as well? So they taught in the yeshiva of Rabbi Shmuel, Kavachayme. This is learned with a Kavachayme. If when it comes to a Seita, it cannot be demanded, it doesn't apply when there's just one aid. In order for a woman to become a Seita, you have to have at least 2 aidim that saw that she was secluded with someone. And that's learned out, Dava from Mamin. So over there, you must have 2 aidim, but nevertheless, megalgalin. You can go and bring a shvua from not only this case where you had the 2 aidim, you can bring the shvua to a different case as well. So if so, mamay, when it comes to a money matter, shenitan li tova beidechad, where by money, it's learned from the pasuk that even though 2 aidim are not believed to actually collect money from someone, but from that pasuk you learn out that to obligate someone to make a shvua, if 1 aid is testifying against him that he owes the money, he's going to have to make a shvua to defend himself. So since by money we find that even with 1 aid you can make a shvua, so definitely we should say that we will then roll the shvua and apply it to other cases as well. So therefore we can learn it with this Kavachayme from Saita. As Gemara, Ashkecham bevadai. So we find that we could be megalgal, you can bring a shvua to something else, another claim, where there is a definite claim, where a person is coming with a tainus body. He's saying that I want you to swear about a different situation where I know for a fact that that piece of karka belongs to me. You wouldn't swear in it for itself, because you don't swear in karka, but now you're megalgal the shvua to this other definite claim. So that we can learn out from Saita that we would be megalgal the shvua. Safik min alan. However, how about if a person wants to be megalgal a shvua to something else, to some other situation of money where there is no definite claim on that? So Rashi here explains 2 points. First of all, Rashi explains why shouldn't we learn out from Saita itself? By Saita, the whole thing is also a safik. So if there you see there's a Gilgul Shvua for a situation of a safik, we can learn out. Says Rashi, by Saita it's different because the first shvua is for a safik. The husband doesn't know for sure if his wife had a relation with someone else. So over there, if the whole shvua is about a safik, it's understood that you could be megalgal the shvua for other situations which are also a safik. But by money matters, where the first shvua has to be for a tainus body for a definite claim, that's the only time when you're chayiv to make a shvua menatayra. There's no shvua menatayra when a person comes and is trying to collect money from someone with a tainus shema that maybe you took money from me. So who says that you could then be megalgal shvua on another situation where there's a safik? Now Rashi explains, what is this other situation of a safik? So as I said, menatayra, there is no such a thing that you swear for a situation of a safik, but the example is, when it comes to partners or workers, so usually the Rabbanan said that as long as they're partners, one partner could turn to his partner and say, I suspect you of taking money from me. Or to his worker, I suspect you of taking money from me. And Rabbanan instituted that they'll have to swear for this. However, when they separate, if they stop the partnership, so then he won't be able to ask him to make this shvua just with the tainus shema, because they're not partners anymore. But if you would want to be megalgal a shvua on this partner, that was once his partner, that he should swear because he suspected him of taking money, so what would be the source to say that you could be megalgal the shvua even for such a situation where he's just suspecting his friend for taking money from him? So Tanya, so Nabraise, Rab Shimon Beichai says that we learn it from Saita as well, because Nemra Shvua Bachutz, the Torah tells us the halacha of Shvua. When it comes outside the Beis HaMikdash, a Shvua regarding money matters, the Namra Shvua B'fnim, and it says a Shvua that you swear by a Saita, which is inside the Azara in the Beis HaMikdash. Ma Shvua Amura B'fnim, just like the Shvua for the Saita, Asa Basafik Evadai. So she swears for a situation of a doubt, just like you would swear for a Vadai. Av Shvua Ha'amura B'chot, so too the Shvua for money matters, Asa Basafik Evadai. We compare a case where there's a claim which is just a suspicion to a claim which is a definite claim, that in both cases you can be megalgal the shvua. The Mefarshim here have a hard time understanding what the Gemara is saying here. How do you learn this from Rab Shimon ben Yochai? If I just explained before, like as Rashi says, that you can't compare suffix by a money matter to a suffix by a saita, since by a saita the whole shvua in the first place is all about a suffix. But by money matters, usually the shvua is only a vadai. So what's the Gemara now saying that we can learn it out from Saita? So some Rishonim say that what Rab Shimon ben Yochai is actually saying is Namra Shvua b'chutz, Namra Shvua b'fnim is Gzeira Shava. And if it's Gzeira Shava, we can't ask such a question that it's not the same. The Gzeira Shava is teaching that whatever halacha applies by the shvua of Saita applies to a shvua by any money matter. Says the Gemara, Ad Heichon Gilgul Shvua. How far does this concept of Gilgul Shvua go? We can roll a Shvua onto other claims that this person may have. How far? What kind of claim could he ask his friend to make a Shvua for him if he's already swearing one Shvua? So he tells his friend that has to swear for him, I want you to additionally swear She'ein Avadayata, that you're not my slave. In other words, he says he's claiming and he's saying that this person is a slave. And at this point, the Gemara understands that he's saying that he's his Evet Kanani, and I want you to swear that you're not an Evet Kanani. So the Gemara says that's what he has to swear. Hahu shamutim mishamtinale. If you say about another Yid that you are my Evet Kanani, and he's a Yid, so even making such a claim about him and spreading a rumor and saying that he's Evet Kanani, this person should be placed into a shamta, into an excommunication for this. The Tanya, as we learned in the Braisa, Hakoyre lachavere Evet, a person that calls his friend a slave, Evet Kanani. Yehei beniddah. You should be put in a niddah, an excommunication for doing this to a person, putting him into defaming him in this way. Mamzer, if he calls his friend a mamzer, seifikas arbaim, you should get lashes. It says here in the Gemara the lashes arbaim, which is usually the lashes minatayre, but this obviously does not mean lashes minatayre. It's Rabbanan said he deserves lashes for this. Rasha, if you refer to someone as a rasha, so Bezdin will not attend to this to stop you from calling a person this name and defaming him in his community, in his city. But still, Yored Imay L'chayev. You yourself could take matters into your hand. If someone calls you a rasha, and you can go and persecute that person. Rashi gives an example. If he has a business, so you can go and open a business and take away his parnasa from him and stop him from calling you a rasha. If you defame someone, he could lose his livelihood, he could lose everything. So therefore, you can take matters in your hand and you're allowed to take care of this. So the point is, how can you say Gilgul Shvua means that you can ask your friend to swear for you that he's not a Evet Kanani when he's a Yid? So rather, Rava said, the Gilgul Shvua here goes to the extent that he tells his friend, swear for me, that you weren't sold to me as an Evet Ivri. That's how far the Shvua goes. Some Mefarshim point out that it's interesting the Gemara says this because we know that the concept of Evet Ivri does not apply when Yovel does not apply. So Bisman Hazeh is no concept of Evet Ivri. But they say it could mean not literally the din of Evet Ivri the way it was in those times, but that you weren't sold to me to work for me as a slave. That's what how far the Gilgul Shvua goes. Says the Gemara, why is there any Chiddush in this? Hi, Tainosa Ma'al Yisihi. This is just like any other proper claim, that if you come forward with a definite claim, and this is no different, and you're basically claiming to this person that I hired you, I bought you to work for me, and you owe me that work, or you have to give me back the money that I paid for hiring you. So this is just a regular claim, no different than any other Gilgul Shvua that you should be able to obligate him to swear. What is the Chiddush to say that it goes to this extent? And says the Gemara, there is a Chiddush here, because Rava is following his reasoning that he said earlier. Rava said about acquiring Eved Ivri, that Eved Ivri, gufay kani. When you acquire Eved Ivri, you're not just acquiring him, hiring him for work, for the value of that work, but you're acquiring his whole body, that you have a certain level of ownership over him. So this goes beyond the money that he owes you or the work that he owes you, and regarding the body of the person that you claim that you own, that usually there's no shvua for such a thing. And here, this is the chiddush of Gilgul Shvua that we're magalgal to this extent. But the Gemara still asks, Ihochi, but if that's the pshat here, Hainu karka. Isn't that the same idea as karka? A piece of land. You claim that someone's piece of land belongs to you, for example, and Menatayra there's no shvua in that, but you magagal the shvua to swear in it. The same also with the guf, that you say that his body, that you hired him or that you own him, so you can be magagal on that as well. Why should this be any different than the whole halacha of gilgul shvua in the first place? Says the Gemara, I would think that it does not apply over here. It would only apply by karka, because ma'adatayme, I would think to say karka hu davidi inchi de mezavni betzina. When it comes to selling property, so it's very often happens that people sell it quietly. So therefore I could say, if it's true that this person really sold you this property, lest I call it, it's possible that nobody knows about it. So when you're asking him to swear for you about this property, it's reasonable. So we would be megalgal the shvu on that. But here you want him to swear that he's not your slave. In Isa Zavin, if it's true that you acquired him as a slave, call it a slave. This is something that everybody would know about. So this is unreasonable to be megalgal shvua to this extent. Kamash Malon, that was the chiddush over here, how far gilgul shvua goes. Even for this, you could also be megalgal shvua that he's not your slave. Zog Teilige Mishnah, continuing here with another halacha regarding kinyanim. So the Mishnah says, Kol hanase domim ba'acher. And now the first and simple pshat of this Mishnah is, as the Gemara would understand in the beginning, as we'll see, is that money that is used to pay up for something that you acquire. So when you acquire a piece of metaltal and any movable item, so you acquire it, let's say with Mashiach, but then you have to pay for it. So you pay coins, money for it. So this money, kivin shezacha zeh nischayev zeh b'chalipov. If a buyer gives one coin to the seller, so even if it's not the value for what he's buying, and it's not being given to be kinda what he's acquiring here with the kinyan of kesef, because what we're talking about over here is buying a movable item. A movable item is acquired with Mashiach, not with kesef. So it's being given here with the intention to be kinda with chalipin, with that exchange that we learn from the pasuk that you can be kinda. So if the buyer gives a coin, in exchange, the kinyan of chalipin takes effect that he'll be kinda whatever comes instead of it. So basically, at this point, we understand that the chiddush of our Mishnah is that the din of chalipin would also apply when you use money for this. Keitzad, now the Mishnah says, how is this? And here, the Mishnah will actually give an example of chalipin which does not include any money in it. Hechliv shoyer b'para. If you're exchanging with someone an ox for a cow, or a chamer b'shoyer, or a donkey for an ox, kivin shezach hazeh, if one takes the ox into his possession, or takes the chamor into his possession, is chayiv zeh b'chalipov. So the other one has to give you the exchange for it, and he's kain it automatically, right away. Okay, so the Gemara will point out that this example here that's given is not really the case of what the halacha that the Mishnah said before. Okay, so the Gemara begins to explain. Chalipin says here in the Mishnah, the kinyan of chalipin, my niu matbeya. What are we using here for this kinyan of chalipin? Now, usually chalipin, as we know, the way it's done today is it's called kinyan sudar. The buyer gives a handkerchief, or you could use a yarmulke, and you give it to the seller, and he picks it up, and that creates the kinyan in exchange. But over here, the Mishnah is saying that what are we using? We're using coins that are usually used to pay up for something. So Shema Mina, does that mean that we have a clear raya here in our Mishnah, matbeya nasa chalipin, that coins, money, could be used in the kinyan of chalipin? And the reason this is a question is because the Gemara in Baba Metzia, which discusses Kinyan Chalipin, concludes that we see in the pasuk, in the source of Kinyan Chalipin, it says that a shoe was used in Rus, but money cannot be used for Chalipin. But here the Mishnah seems to be saying it can. Amar Rav Yehuda, Hachi Ka'amar. You have to read the Mishnah differently. Kol hanishum damim ba'acher. Anything that has a certain value of money, and you evaluate it for its worth of money, so that would actually mean any item in the world besides money itself, which does not have to be evaluated because it is money. When you give it, when the buyer gives it to the seller and he lifts it up, so then the kinyan takes effect, and the seller has to give you in exchange what he's selling you. So the point here that the Mishnah is coming to say is that chalipin could be done with any item in the world other than money. Now the chiddush on this is, as Rashi points out, we'll see soon in the continuation of the Gemara, that one opinion is that for chalipin you must have something that's similar to a shoe, which is some kind of a vessel, a keli, something that has a use for something. But peiris, which means fruits or anything that's not a keli, cannot be used for chalipin. But from what this Mishnah is saying is, no, kol anishim, anything that is evaluated, because it's not actual money itself, meaning any paytas, anything, it is a keli, it's not a keli, it doesn't matter, it could be used to the kinyan of chalipin. That's what our Mishnah is teaching. Says the Gemara, Deika Nami, I'll prove to you that this is the pshat of the Mishnah. Because the Ktani, what's the example the Mishnah says? For this halacha, Keitzad, Hechlef Shebe Pari, exchange an ox for a cow, or Chamay B'Shayr, a donkey for an ox. And that is the example of the kinyan of chalipin here. So if we're talking about money, if the Chiddush of the Mishnah was that money works for chalipin, why is he giving this example? Rather, it's giving this example because this exchange of an ox for a cow is an example where you're using something, some item over here, it's an animal for the kinyan of chalipin. It's not a keli, and the Chiddush here is, even if it's not a vessel, it can be used for the kinyan of chalipin. Shema Mino, this is a clear daya. Says the Gemara now, Lamai de Salik Adaitan Me'ikara. According to the original pshat, we thought the Mishnah is teaching here, the Matbeya Nasa Chalipin, that the first din of the Mishnah is saying that a coin could be used for Chalipin. My Ketzad, how would we understand then the Ketzad of the Mishnah? What is the Chiddush the Mishnah is coming to say? Says the Gemara, Hachikama, you'll have to read the Mishnah as follows. After it says the first halacha that money could be used for Chalipin, then the Mishnah is saying another halacha, Peiris, Nami of the Chalipin, fruits could be used for chalipin. So Rashi says fruits is not necessarily only fruits, but it means to say anything that's not a vessel like a shoe that's mentioned in the pasuk for chalipin. So you can use anything for chalipin, any item. And on that the Mishnah says, Keitzad, how does this come out? Hechlef b'sar shoy b'para. And here the Gemara actually adds that the exchange over here was not with the cow, a live ox that is, but with the meat of an ox. Bipara for a cow, or bisar chamer, or the meat of a donkey, b'shayr for an ox. Once one is zeiche in this, the seller is zeiche in this meat, so then he has to give the exchange to the buyer. Now she says the reason why the Gemara adds in over here, bisar, the meat, is because it wants to emphasize that it's any kind of item, it's not a vessel, it's not even something that's similar to a vessel. You could say an animal is not a vessel, but it has a use, it works, and it's similar to a vessel. But it's saying, no, we're talking about just a piece of meat. Even that could be used for chalipin as well. So this is the pshat, and the Mishnah over here, according to the final pshat, the Gemara actually said that the Mishnah is not talking about money, or the pshat that we thought, that the first din of the Mishnah is talking about money, but the Mishnah here afterwards is teaching me the din that you could use for chalipin anything other than money. Now this the Gemara asks, all of this is true according to Rav Sheshes, the Oma, Peiris of the chalipin. Rav Sheshes, his opinion is that it doesn't have to be a vessel for chalipin. Even fruits can be used for chalipin. However, Rav Nachman's opinion is, the Oma, he says, Peiris loy of the chalipin. Fruits or anything similar which is not a vessel cannot be used for chalipin. What is the example the Mishnah is saying? What's the pshat here in the Mishnah? What's the pshat in the first halacha of the Mishnah? What's the pshat in the example it's using? According to both pshatim we said before, the Mishnah here is teaching me that anything other than money could be used for chalipin. Well, how would Rav Nachman explain this? So the Gemara says, Hachi Kamar. According to Rav Nachman, the first case in the Mishnah is actually teaching me a completely different din. It's not teaching me the din of chalipin. What it's saying is, Yesh domim shehen kechalipin. There is sometimes that money will work for a kinyan, for metaltalin, for movable items, similar to how chalipin works. Which means usually, what's the kinyan for movable items? It has to be meshicha. There's no kinyan of kesef, as we looked before in one of the previous Mishnahs. But over here, what this Mishnah is saying is, sometimes you could use the kinyan of money similar to chalipin that does work for movable items. How is that? Keitzad hechliv demei shayr bepara or demei chamer b'shayr. If there's the money that's owed for a cow, and that's exchanged for, or money that's owed for an ox, that is, and that's exchanged for a cow, or money that's owed for a donkey, and that's exchanged for an ox. Over here, this kinyan will take effect. Now, what is this case? So Rashi says the case over here is somebody bought an ox and he didn't pay for it. Right? So the kinyan took effect, he bought this ox, but he still owes money to the seller. Now the seller comes to him and says, instead of paying me this money, I'll be moichel you what you owe me, but give me your cow that you have instead. Right? So basically, he's getting this cow instead of the money here that he owes him. In such a case, the money that he's getting for it will be the kinyan of this cow. Even without the seller making any meshich in the cow, the kinyan of this kes of the money that he owes him will be the kinyan. That's what the Mishnah is saying here when it says it's referring over here to this case where he owed money and now he's being meichel on this money, it becomes a kinyan. Now, why is this? Don't we know that the kinyan of metaltalin must be with Mashiach or something similar to Mashiach? Says the Gemara, my time, and what's the reason for this? Savalak Rabbi Yechanan. Because Rav Nachman that's saying this pshat in the Mishnah, he holds like Rabbi Yechanan. The Amar Rabbi Yechanan says that the truth is, Dvar Teire, that Minat Teire we learn from the Pasuk, that Moi is kindness. That money is a kinyan for metaltalin. Why did Chachamim say that only Mashiach should be the kinyan? That is only a gzeira because because if you allow the seller to still have the items of the buyer in his house, and then a fire breaks out, and because the kinyan of kesef already took effect, so the seller doesn't care to go and save it from the fire because it doesn't even belong to him. You said, and don't tell the buyer, sorry, it's your loss that the fire burnt it. So we didn't want the kinyan to take effect until he does Mashiach and takes it out of his property. So like this, if it's still in his house, he's going to make sure that it doesn't get burnt, or something similar, that it shouldn't get destroyed. So that's the usual gzeira that Chachamim said, that the kinyan min ha'Torah of kesef should not take effect. So now says the Gemara, milsa de shchiach gozr berabanan, the usual kinyan of kesef when you're giving actual money, that's where Chachamim decreed that the kinyan should not take effect. But milsa de loy shchiach le gozr berabanan. Here we have a mode of kinyan kesef which is unusual. It's not actual kesef, but it's kesef that was owed, and he's being meilchu you that kesef in exchange for this para. This kind of kinyan kesef, Chachamim were not geyser, and you can be kinyan with kesef. That's according to Rabbi Yechanan. Asks the Gemara, but Reish Lakish the Amar, Reish Lakish argues with Rabbi Yechanan, and Reish Lakish's opinion is Mashiach mufureshes min ha'Torah. The fact that only Mashiach is kinyan for metaltalin, that's clear in the Torah. There is no kinyan of kesef for any metaltalin, not even min ha'Torah. So if so, the question is, you can't say this pshat that we just said earlier in the Mishnah, that the Mishnah is saying that this case is an exception, that you could be kinyan with kesef. So what would be the pshat in the Mishnah here? So haniche isavala karav sheishes, the oma peiris of the chalipin metaretz karav sheishes. So according to Reish Lakish, we could only say the pshat in the Mishnah according to Rav Sheishes, because Rav Sheishes holds that you can use for chalipin anything other than money. And that goes back to the two first pshatim that the Gemara said before, that the Mishnah is coming to say that point. So we can say that the pshat, according to Reish Lakish in the Mishnah, is like Rav Sheishes. But Ela Isavala Rav Nachman, if Reish Lakish holds like Rav Nachman, that the Amma Peiris Layavdi Chalipin, that you can't do Chalipin with Peiris because it has to be a Keli, Umatbeya Leikani. And also, when it comes to any metaltalin, you could never Umatbeya Leikani, and this Matbeya Leikani is referring to, it's referring to all metaltalin, that there could never be a kinyan of kesef for any metaltalin. So now, b'may moikila, what is the din of that our Mishnah is saying? It can't be the first pshatim that we said, that the Mishnah is coming to say that chalipin can work with anything other than money, because according to Rav Nachman, that doesn't work. It has to be dafka keli. It can't be this pshat that we're saying here, that sometimes the kinyan of kesef works for metaltalin, because Reish Lakish holds no such thing. Min ha'Torah, the kinyan of metaltalin always must be Mashiach. So what is the din of the Mishnah? Says the Gemara, you're right. Al karachach k'Rav Sheishes virlei. Reish Lakish must hold like Rav Sheishes, and the din of our Mishnah is coming to teach that chalipin is a kinyan that can work with any item other than money, even peiris, like the first pshatim that we said here in the Mishnah. Let's learn one more Mishnah. We're going to learn to the next Mishnah on Daf Chavtes. When it comes to the Rishus of Gavaya, which is hektish, so you acquire with money. And this is for movable items, not with Mashiach like it is usually. But if Rishus Hedyet, when it comes to normal kinyanim amongst people, b'chazaka. That's with chazaka. Rashi here says the term chazaka does not mean chazaka, which is usually used for a property, but it means Mashiach. Another din that's unique regarding hektish, if you say something that this belongs to hektish, it's like you gave it over to hektish, and it becomes in the rishus and the ownership of hektish. We learned in the Braisa that spells out the details of this. What does this mean that the possession of hektish is with kesef? So the gabbai of hektish, he paid money for an animal, to acquire an animal for hektish. Even if the animal is not here, there's no Mashiach that could be done with it, but he paid for it, for hektish. Kana, hektish acquires it with the money. But ubehedyet, by normal people, to make a kinyan, lekanat sheyimshach. There's no kinyan unless there's actual Mashiach. Now, keitzad, amirasi legavai ki misirasi lehedyet, what does it mean when you say words for hektish? It's like equivalent to giving it over to hektish. Ha'omer, a person says, Shor ze oila. This ox should be for korban oila. Or bay ze hektish. This house should be hektish. So just by saying this, afilu b'soif oilam, even if it's at the other end of the world, kana, hektish is kind of this immediately. Now, behedyet, by normal people, loikana, you will not acquire, ad sheyimshech, until you do meshicha, that's for the ox, or v'yachzik, until you do chazakah, which is in the house, like the din of chazakah regarding a karka or a property, a house. Okay, so now based on this, so here we see that when it comes to hektish, which kinyan works? Just the kinyan of kesef, not meshicha. Now, the Gemara brings over here the halacha as follows. Moshchay b'mana. So what happens if a person, a hedyet, so he wants to redeem from the hektish something, so he didn't pay any money for it yet, he just took it. He pulled it, he did meshicha, and at that point, it was a value of a money. He gave a money for it. But well, he didn't actually give the money yet. No, it was at that point the value of it was a money. So he just did meshicha. Now, but he didn't actually get a chance to give the money to the gabbai of hektish and the value went up to 200. So because in hektish you could only redeem with money and not meshicha, and now the value went up. You didn't redeem it yet, so now you have to go by the new value. You have to give the value of 200 now, because it's still in the rishus of hektish until this point. My time, what's the source for this? That by hektish the only kinyan is with money. V'nasan hakesef akamlai. You give money and then it comes back to your ownership. What happens if it's the opposite? Moshchay b'masayim. You pulled it, you did do the kinyan of meshicha, and at that point it was worth 200. Now v'lehispik levdoisa, didn't get a chance to actually give the money to the gabbai of hektish at she'amad b'moneh, and its value went down. So now you'll say, oh, now the value went down and it's still in the rishus of hektish. I'm redeeming it today. Shouldn't I redeem it with its value that it has today, which is half of its price? Nevertheless, Noisin Masayim, you're going to have to pay the original price of 200 when you did that meshicha, when it was worth 200. My time, what's the reason? Shouldn't you go by the value that it has now, since it didn't take effect yet when he redeemed it before? The answer is, we don't want that the power of a hedyet that he has should be stronger than hektish. Since by a case of a hedyet, so over here, he will have to pay Masayim like it was in the beginning, because that's when the Mashiach was done. We don't want hektish to be any less than that. So therefore he has to pay that original price of 200. How about, here the Gemara is going to talk about when a person redeemed with money. He already gave the money to the gabbai, and at that point it was worth 200. But he didn't get a chance to pull it and bring it to his possession, and its price went down to a mana. So you can't ask for a reimbursement from hektish for the 200 that you gave in the beginning. That 200, that is your pidyon, because by hektish it works by the money that you gave. The fact that you didn't do meshicha doesn't matter. My time, again, the pasuk, as it says, the money, that's what brings about the pidyon. In the reverse, if you gave money, you just gave one money to redeem it, and then you didn't get a chance to do the meshicha, and the price went up to 200. So now, we may think that the halacha should be that we see by hektish, you have to be machmer, it shouldn't be less than a hedyet, and you should have to give 200. Says the Gemara, Masha Poda Podui. What you redeemed in the beginning with the lesser price, with half the price that it was 100, it's redeemed. Very nice and so that's only the money he has to give, and he gave it already, and you don't have to give anything else. Frak the Gemara, but amai. Why is this so? Hachanami here as well. Name, shouldn't we say lo yehe kayach hedyet chamor mehektish, that the hedyet should not be more stringent than when it comes to a hektish? So in such a case, by a hedyet, so when he gave it in the beginning, it was worth a mana, but he didn't do the meshicha until later when it's worth masayim, you're going to have to pay masayim for it, because by hedyet you always go by the meshicha later. Meshicha is the kinyan. So shouldn't we apply the same thing to hektish? Says the Gemara, it doesn't work that way, because otu, hedyet, lav, mishaparakai, even by a hedyet, wouldn't we apply over here the mishapara? What is this mishapara? Mishapara is when a person gives his word for something, and he doesn't stick to his word in a transaction, in a sale. So then we give him this Misha Para, which is basically the opposite of a bracha, and the nusach of the Misha Para basically goes, Misha Para l'doira mabel v'doira flaga, the one that punished, the doira mabel should punish this person as well for not keeping his word. So basically the point is, even by a hedyot, even though if he wants, he could retract from his word because the price now went up and Mashiach was not done yet. But if the person paid before 100 and that was the price then, so there was a certain word that you said that it's going to be that price, he shouldn't really back out. So therefore, even by a hedyot, you shouldn't really back out. So therefore, by hektish as well, we say that we go by the first price that he paid, since by hektish, the halacha is you always go by the kinyan kesef, by the money. That's what creates the opinion of the hektish.